Harlem Golay and Olga Rutterschmidt, two elderly women, were convicted of a cunning and cruel scheme involving the murder of two homeless men in order to collect a significant amount of money through life insurance. Their trial, which lasted 4 weeks, revealed the details of a meticulously planned plot to take human lives for financial gain. The two women, both in their 70s, were accused of murdering Paul Vados, 73, and Kenneth McDavid, 50, both of whom were found dead in circumstances that initially appeared to be hit-and-run accidents. The first crime occurred in November 1999, when Paul Vados was found dead on a Los Angeles street, with signs of having been hit by a car. 6 years later, in 2005, the same situation happened again with Kenneth McDavid, who was found in similar conditions. At first, it seemed like these were isolated tragedies, but the investigation revealed an alarming pattern. Prosecutors alleged that Harlem and Olga had reached out to the victims, offering them shelter and support. The two women had built a friendship with the homeless men and secretly took out life insurance policies in their names, with themselves as beneficiaries. The total value of each policy was approximately $2.8 million, which was the basis for the murder plot. Both women had purchased the policies months in advance, hoping that the payouts would become more difficult to contest under California state law. When they felt the time had come to act, Golay and Rutterschmidt staged the hit-and-runs, making the deaths look like accidents, as part of a carefully orchestrated plan to secure the insurance payouts. However, the plot was uncovered when police investigated the high insurance premiums and the fact that the two women were directly linked to the deaths, which raised suspicions. Furthermore, the collection of evidence, such as McDavid's DNA from a car that Golay used to simulate the hit-and-run, proved crucial to solving the case. During the trial, the court was shocked by the cold-bloodedness and calculation of the defendants. The prosecution, although not seeking the death penalty, sought a life sentence, which was granted. Golay and Rutterschmidt were sentenced to life in prison without parole, and the case generated great repercussion, being considered one of the most shocking examples of crimes motivated by greed. The case was marked by the manipulation of society's most vulnerable victims and the cruelty of two women who, in the pursuit of wealth, sacrificed human lives, demonstrating a total lack of remorse or empathy. Before we continue, please check if you are already subscribed to our channel. In this space, we bring you a series of videos about criminals who shook the world, and you don't want to miss any of the stories, do you? Subscribe, and thank you very much for following us. Another equally shocking case occurred in Michigan, involving Mark Lotunsky, a man accused of committing a brutal murder against Kevin Bacon, a young and talented 25-year-old hairdresser. Kevin's disappearance on December 24, 2019, on Christmas Eve, quickly generated great concern. Kevin was last seen when he met Lotunsky, after a conversation through a dating app. Days later, he was found dead in circumstances that left everyone horrified. Kevin's body was suspended from the ceiling, and forensic examinations revealed the extreme violence to which he had been subjected. Lotunsky, who had met Kevin through the dating app, was accused of stabbing and mutilating the young man in an extremely violent manner, as well as committing cannibalism with parts of his body. The crime shocked both the local community and the public, due to the brutality and coldness with which it was carried out. During the trial, the description of the details of the crime left everyone present stunned. The victim, in addition to being brutally murdered, had her body treated with such brutality that the court could not hide its outrage at Lotunsky's actions. Kevin's sister, Jane Bacon, gave an emotional statement in court, describing how much her brother meant to her. She fondly remembered Kevin as not only her brother, but also her first best friend and protector. In her words, she expressed how devastating the loss was, especially knowing that Kevin had a promising career as a hairdresser and, even more so, that he had been posthumously awarded a degree in psychology by the University of Michigan. She spoke with pain about how Kevin's life was cut short in such a tragic and cruel way. In addition to the horrific act committed, Lotunsky's behavior throughout the investigation also caused outrage. Lotunsky had shown signs of disturbing behavior, and the investigation revealed that he had sought out other similar encounters. During sentencing, the judge highlighted Lotunsky's intentional planning, considering that the crime was carried out with calculated cruelty, without any remorse or regret shown by the defendant. Lotunsky, who had remained silent throughout much of the trial, continued to show little to no remorse, which reinforced the severity of his sentence. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a verdict that reflected the heinous nature of his crime. Another equally grim case that shocked the country. Joseph James DeAngelo, nicknamed the Golden State Killer, was a criminal who spread terror in California between 1973 and 1979. During that time, he committed several violent crimes, including home invasions, robberies, abuse, and murder. His actions left a trail of suffering in several families, but he remained unpunished for decades, until he was arrested in 2018, at the age of 74. One of the people affected by his crimes was Elizabeth, the daughter of one of DeAngelo's victims. She recalled how he broke into her home one night wearing a ski mask and holding a gun. He threatened her, saying he would take her if she screamed. Elizabeth witnessed the moment he shot her father twice, taking his life. She thought she would be killed too and stood still, expecting the worst, until DeAngelo left the house, leaving her traumatized. During the trial, family members of the victims were given the chance to make statements about the devastating impact the crimes had on their lives. After hearing all of these statements, DeAngelo stood up from his wheelchair, removed his mask, and apologized to everyone he had hurt. "I heard every single statement, and I am truly sorry to everyone I have hurt," he said. His words left the courtroom silent, and some family members of the victims were touched by his apology. However, many felt that this was not enough. They believed he should have received the death penalty for his crimes. In exchange for his guilty pleas, the death penalty was dropped, which left some upset. The prosecutor made a point of acknowledging the pain of the victims and their families, saying that those who lost their lives have not been forgotten. She said, "Although many of the victims' families cannot be here, there are 13 angels who are with us, watching over all of us at this time." Despite the absence of the death penalty, the victim's family and friends felt some relief in knowing that DeAngelo will spend the rest of his life in prison, paying for the cruel crimes he committed. He was able to live as if nothing had happened, enjoying life with his family, while we, my family and I, no longer had my father. At least now he will spend the rest of his life locked up in prison. These were the feelings of the victims' friends and relatives, who spoke about the void left in their lives and how much they still suffer. All they wanted was for DeAngelo to stay in prison, paying for all the suffering he caused. However, when he heard the sentence, DeAngelo showed no remorse and seemed not to care about what was happening. Another shocking case was that of Alex Murdaugh, a 54-year-old lawyer whose presence in court caused national commotion and attention. In a tense trial watched by an attentive audience, Alex faced extremely serious charges. He was the main suspect and accused of a terrible crime against his own family, accused of taking the lives of his wife, Meg, and his son, Paul. Throughout the trial, Alex maintained his stance, repeatedly claiming his innocence, but the weight of the accumulated evidence led to his being charged with double murder and illegal use of a firearm. The case shocked not only because of the tragic and brutal nature of the crimes, but also because of the public importance of Alex and the legacy of his family, one of the most influential and respected in the local legal community. The Murdaugh family, known for decades of work in the field of law and justice, began to bear the weight of a scandal that now tarnished its history and legacy. According to the investigation, Alex's motivations were thoroughly examined. He allegedly committed these barbaric acts to cover up a series of dark secrets involving his lifestyle, finances and business, which included fraud and manipulation. Prosecutors revealed that Alex Murdaugh had deceived not only colleagues and partners, but also his own wife and son, who, theoretically, should have been the people he trusted the most and those closest to him. During the trial, the prosecution highlighted Alex's selfish and ruthless character, pointing out that he prioritized his own interests above any personal connection, even family, which demonstrated his willingness to sacrifice anyone who got in the way to cover up his misconduct. Despite a series of overwhelming evidence and arguments against him, Alex decided to testify in his own defense. When he took the witness stand, he firmly maintained his version of the facts, denying any involvement in the murders and stating that he would never have the courage to hurt his wife or his son. However, his testimony did not convince the court. The judge overseeing the case noted that at no point during the trial did Alex show any remorse or emotion, which added even more weight to the assessment of the coldness with which he seemed to view the charges and the trial itself. At the end of the deliberations, Alex Murdaugh was sentenced to 2 life sentences, one for each murder committed. While he listened to the sentence, Alex remained silent, without any sign of emotion or remorse, which left the court even more impressed by his apparent indifference. The conviction brought some relief to the community and to the victims' relatives, but the tragedy and scandal left deep scars on the public image of the Murdoch family, a once admired legal dynasty now irreparably damaged by the brutality of the events. Meanwhile, in another part of the country, another dark and heartbreaking story was unfolding in the courts. Vonda Starr Smith, a 60-year-old woman, was facing an intense trial for the murder of a pregnant woman, a crime made all the more tragic by the fact that the victim's death also resulted in the loss of her unborn baby. The crime shocked the community and caused great public outcry, especially among those who knew both the victim and the defendant. During the trial, several witnesses were called to testify about Vonda's character, attempting to paint a different picture of her than the one portrayed by the prosecution. Friends and former co-workers of Vonda described her as a kind and generous woman. Jessica Price, a former co-worker, gave an emotional testimony, expressing her sadness at seeing Vonda in that situation and recalling times when Vonda would help others at work and show empathy and care for everyone. However, despite these attempts to soften Vonda's image, the judge remained firm in his judgment, emphasizing that the crime was extremely brutal and that the impact on the victim's family was devastating and irreparable. He emphasized that the victim, a pregnant woman, was in a position of great vulnerability, which only increased the gravity of the act committed. For the judge, the fact that the victim had trusted Vonda made the crime even more serious and disturbing, as this trust had been irreparably broken. Vonda's defense, led by a lawyer who argued in favor of a lighter sentence, highlighted her past work and her poor criminal record. The lawyer insisted that Vonda had never been involved in any type of crime until then and that her life before this episode was considered blameless. Even so, the judge made it clear that, given the gravity of the case, it would not be possible to be lenient. He said the decision needed to take into account not only the family's suffering, but also the need for justice for the victim and her unborn baby. The courtroom was completely silent as the judge handed down Vonda's sentence: life in prison for the first-degree murder of the pregnant woman and the second-degree murder of the unborn baby. Throughout the trial, Vonda showed moments of emotion, crying as she listened to testimonies from friends and family who recalled the positive side of her personality. However, when she heard the final sentence, her expression became vacant and she remained seemingly impassive, showing no sign of remorse. This moment of indifference left a deep impression on those present, who watched her every reaction closely. For the victim's family, the sentence brought partial relief, knowing that Vonda would face the consequences for the cruel crime that took 2 lives at once. The case left a deep mark on the community, serving as a painful reminder of the tragedies that can arise from situations of betrayed trust. The cases we discuss today reveal the complexity of the justice system and the profound impact that crimes have on the lives of victims and their families. Each trial and each sentence shows us the seriousness of the acts committed, and how the court seeks to deliver justice, even when the crimes are unspeakably cruel. If you were impacted by the stories we shared, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content, and comment below with your thoughts on these court decisions. Your opinion is very important to us and helps to strengthen our community. Until the next video, and keep following our channel for more reports on justice and the stories that need to be told.